There's something incredible happening in the sky right now that points to one of the most special places on the planet, the Giza Plateau in Egypt. Despite mainstream archaeology's insistence that the pyramids are just tombs for the pharaohs, many of us can sense that there's something far more profound at work there. And for those with eyes to see, there's plenty of evidence that that's true. Some of it is very tangible, but some of it was revealed by the great mystics of the past 150 years. People like Helena Blavatsky, the Austrian clairvoyant Rudolf Steiner, and the sleeping prophet Edgar Cayce. Cayce said that survivors of the destruction of an advanced ancient civilization, Atlantis, buried their wisdom in 3 underground repositories, the Halls of Records. One of them was hidden near the Sphinx. And this year, we've seen tantalizing suggestions that Cayce may well have been onto something, with the release of a highly controversial satellite radar study claiming that massive structures are hidden under the Khafre pyramid on the Giza Plateau. But we're only just getting started. The astrology I'm looking at is strongly suggesting that ancient spiritual knowledge is about to be recovered, probably in Egypt. This mind-blowing knowledge will challenge many people's most cherished beliefs and even bring widespread shock and disillusionment. In this video, I'm going to show you some intriguing astrological patterns that point to major events imminent in Egypt, as well as revelation from the sky and from below the surface of the earth. So get ready for another journey into the past to understand the present and the future. If you're enjoying this video so far, then please do drop a like and let YouTube and me know that. And do subscribe to this channel if you find this kind of stuff interesting, because there's a lot more where this came from. And if you really like what I do here, you can sign up as a member of World Astrology Report at worldastrologyreport.com and say goodbye to those pesky ads. You'll get access to a version of this video with an exclusive bonus section, as well as extended versions of all my other videos. And you'll get access to my long-form live streams in which I dive deep into topics in astrology. In the last 2 on hot degrees and closing squares, I reveal techniques that give us incredible insight into the events of the coming years. I'm doing one of these streams every month, and members get instant access to all of them. You'll also get access to my private forum where you'll be able to chat with me directly. So thanks for listening, and now back to the video. First of all, I'm going to credit my sources in this video. This is a subject I've been following for some time, but a lot of what I know about it I learned from Daniel List, aka Dark Journalist. He just dropped an almost 2-hour-long special documentary on this very subject. I suggest you watch it if you want to dig deeper into the subject of Egypt, Atlantis, Cayce, and high technology. The video is linked below. Now, the mainstream narrative about the pyramids states that they were built during Egypt's Old Kingdom, around 2500 BC, as tombs for the pharaohs. But no such remains have ever been found in the Giza pyramids. What's more, we're supposed to believe that the Egyptian civilization only emerged around 3100 BC, but just a few hundred years later, the Egyptians were building structures as massive and sophisticated as the Great Pyramid. Later pyramids are nowhere near as well constructed as those first pyramids were. It's as if there was a degradation in knowledge and skill over time. That's something we see at other megalithic sites, such as those in Peru, like the fortress of Sacsayhuaman. The lower layers of this structure feature massive, perfectly interlinked blocks, but the later ones built on top show a very different and much less impressive construction style. And then there are artifacts like the Antikythera mechanism, which reveals incredible mechanical sophistication and astronomical knowledge. Dating to the 1st century BC, this device can predict eclipses years in advance. It's an incredible anachronism that tells us that there was a lot more knowledge in the ancient world than we generally believe, but that knowledge was lost over time. And then there's the Piri Reis map, dated to 1513, which shows the coastline of South America and Antarctica without ice, a state it hasn't been in for more than 6,000 years. These anomalies, which mainstream academics prefer to just ignore, suggest that in some ways civilizational advancement has actually declined over time, in contrast to the idea that we've progressed in linear fashion from hunter-gatherers to settled farmers to iPhone gorpers. Ancient people believed civilization and consciousness rise and fall in cycles, as we explored in my 2 recent videos with Bibhu Dev Misra on the Yuga cycle and the end of the Kali Yuga. Another incredible thing about the pyramids is their geometry, which encodes facts about the size and shape of the Earth that, according to the mainstream narrative, couldn't have been known by their builders at the time. Some of these are explored by Randall Carlson in his amazing lecture, Hidden Mathematics, on the After School channel, again linked below. Carlson points out that because of the spinning of the Earth, our planet isn't exactly spherical. The polar diameter of the Earth is about 7,900 miles, but the equatorial diameter is 7,926 miles, 26 miles longer. The geometry of the Great Pyramid encodes these dimensions and strongly suggests that whoever built it knew the exact size and shape of the Earth. And that suggests the hand of highly advanced knowledge in the construction of this site, knowledge that was lost over time. And then there's the amazing news that came out right around the time of the spring equinox this very year, the date when Bibhu Dev Misra argues that the Kali Yuga, the age of ignorance and separation from the divine, ended. Scientists using a kind of space-based radar technology called SAR announced they'd identified 8 massive spiral structures descending hundreds of meters underground below the Khafre pyramid in Giza to 2 large cuboid structures. Could this be the discovery of what renowned psychic Edgar Cayce called the Atlantean Hall of Records? The Greek philosopher Plato tells us that Atlantis, a great civilization based on a large island beyond the Pillars of Hercules, i.e. in the Atlantic Ocean, was destroyed around 9600 BC. This time period lines up with when the ancient Persians believed the world had been created, with the end of the Younger Dryas period, a 1200-year cool period that saw massive floods which shaped the dramatic landscape of parts of North America. The sleeping prophet Edgar Cayce spoke of this cataclysm and a conflict in Atlantis that he said led to it. He gave hundreds of readings in a trance in which he described people's past lives in the Atlantean period. According to Cayce, Atlantis was destroyed because of growing greed and corruption and the misuse of technology. The survivors of the cataclysm had scattered around the world, including to Egypt, and hidden a hall of records, a library holding historical records, spiritual documents, information about the origins of humanity, and advanced technologies below the right paw of the Sphinx. And they hid 2 other halls of records, one in the Yucatan Peninsula and another in Bimini in the Bahamas. It's in Bimini that a research team discovered a mysterious underwater wall about half a mile long in 1968. Many geologists argue this is a natural formation, but proponents of the idea that a highly advanced ancient civilization really did exist, including Graham Hancock, say this is evidence of Atlantis. Who's right? Well, what do you think? It doesn't look very natural to me. And here's where this gets really interesting, because in the 1930s, Cayce told his followers that parts of Atlantis would rise in the late 1960s. That's right when the Bimini Wall was discovered. Probably nothing, right? Cayce said the Hall of Records would be discovered when humanity was ready to take in ancient spiritual knowledge. Could that time be now? Another man who may or may not turn out to be a prophet is Chris Bledsoe, a UFO experiencer and author of the book UFO of God. Bledsoe experienced a flap of UFO sightings on his North Carolina property, and in 2012 he had a vision of a luminous being he has called the Lady, a divine feminine presence who radiates love and peace and communicates telepathically with him. Bledsoe's experiences have drawn interest from NASA and the intelligence community, including CIA high-up Jim Semivan, which suggests to me that something is really going on with him. Now, Bledsoe has said that the Lady has given him prophecies and shown him visions of the future. The best known of them concerns the Sphinx. The Lady apparently told Bledsoe this: when the red star of Regulus rises just before dawn in the gaze of the Sphinx, a new knowledge will come into the world. This prophecy seems to refer to what an astrologer would call the heliacal rising of Regulus, which happens when the star becomes visible for the first time just before dawn each year. Bledsoe has been saying that this prophecy refers to the spring of 2026. But like all the stars in the zodiac, Regulus makes a heliacal rise every year, and it does it in late August, not the spring. But what Bledsoe is saying is nonetheless pretty interesting. It aligns with what Casey said. And bear in mind what the SAR scans have already revealed. Unless we're being subjected to some kind of massive, cunningly orchestrated psyop, events on the ground seem to be confirming what the mystics are saying. And then there's the year Bledsoe is talking about, 2026. As an astrologer, I find that intriguing because it points us towards a massively important astrological event taking place that year, one that does indeed suggest we might be on the brink of uncovering ancient spiritual knowledge. There's a remarkable event happening in the sky this year and next and through to 2027. It's the conjunction of Saturn and Neptune. These conjunctions happen every 36 years or so. So they're generally important events, but not that rare, all other things being equal. But this one is particularly special. And the reason for that is that the two planets are meeting at 0 degrees Aries, the very first of the 360 degrees of the zodiac. This is one of the 4 world points. You can see the zodiac as a story of life, starting at Aries when we emerge into the world and start to explore, and ending in Pisces, the water sign at the end of the zodiac, when we rejoin the ocean of consciousness from which we've sprung. And so the first degree of the zodiac and anything that happens there carries the notion of birth, emergence, and the new along with it. Now, I've talked a lot about this conjunction before, such as in this video. Saturn signifies material reality, while Neptune signifies the realm of the ideal and numinous. And so conjunctions of Saturn and Neptune are times when the boundary between the spiritual and the material gets thinner. We see manifestations of spirit, like the miracle of Fatima of 1917. We see great UFO flaps, like the saucers over Washington of 1952. And we see attempts to harness the spiritual for mundane means, as in the CIA's MK Ultra program, also begun at that same Saturn-Neptune conjunction. Now, the modern state of Egypt itself was founded on June the 19th of 1953 at that conjunction. People and entities that have a certain planetary combination in their birth charts tend to be sensitive to the reappearance of that combination in the sky. So from that alone, we can tell that this Saturn-Neptune conjunction will be important for the state of Egypt. But there's something else. For some reason, the very first degree of Aries seems to relate to Egypt itself. What we're going to see now is how whenever there are major planetary events in the first degree of the zodiac, we see important developments in Egypt, both related to Egypt as a modern state and to it as the home of the pyramids and thus a place of great spiritual importance. I haven't been able to find a conjunction of Saturn and Neptune in the first degree of Aries using my astrology software at all. As far as I can tell, this hasn't happened in all of recorded history. But there have been conjunctions of other planets in that same degree. And actually, there was one very recently, a conjunction of Jupiter and Uranus at 0 degrees of Aries on June the 8th, 2010. Jupiter and Uranus conjunctions tend to signify big cultural and technological breakthroughs, as well as moments when we see the rapid emergence of revolutionary energy. These conjunctions come every 14 years, and the last one took place in April 2024, when student protests against the Israeli war in Gaza took over campuses in the US. Now, the 2010 conjunction at 0 Aries was one of a series of 3 conjunctions, which is something that happens very regularly due to planetary retrogrades. There was a second conjunction on September the 19th, 2010, and a third and final one on January the 4th of 2011. Very soon after that third conjunction in January 2011, protests against the rule of Hosni Mubarak began in Cairo. In other words, the Arab Spring began in Egypt. This was a sudden emergence of revolutionary energy aiming to overthrow an authoritarian regime that had ruled Egypt since 1981. All of this is very Jupiter-Uranus. Now, interestingly, there was another conjunction of Jupiter and Uranus in the first degree of Aries in the 20th century, and this one took place on the 25th of January, 1928. What happened around that time? Well, very soon after that, on March the 22nd of that year, with the conjunction still very much in effect, an Islamic scholar and school teacher named Hassan al-Banna founded a religious and social movement that you may have heard of, the Muslim Brotherhood. This Islamist organization operates to this day across the world. And guess what? It was heavily involved in the Arab Spring. In Egypt, it was legalized and then took power during that revolution. So we can see that both Jupiter-Uranus conjunctions at 0 degrees of Aries had big revolutionary implications for Egypt that involved the Muslim Brotherhood. But I have more examples of how every time 0 Aries is stimulated in a significant way, we see important events in Egypt. For example, there was an eclipse very, very close to this point on March the 20th of 2015. Less than a week before that eclipse, Egypt announced plans to build a new capital next to Cairo. Building a new capital is a pretty big deal in the history of any country. We can also see major events when slow-moving outer planets hit this degree. Neptune is in this degree right now, but it was also there in 1861, a whole Neptune cycle ago. Neptune signifies oceanic things, things that have to do with water, among other things. What was going on at this time? Well, they were building the Suez Canal, a waterway joining 2 seas together to facilitate global trade. And I have one more mind-blowing example that shows us that Egypt's more mystical side can also get triggered when this degree is hit. Pluto, which takes 248 years to circle the zodiac, was last at this degree in 1822. And it was this year when Jean-François Champollion deciphered the Rosetta Stone. The Rosetta Stone is a large stone block with an inscription on it in 3 languages: Greek, Demotic Egyptian, and hieroglyphics. The stone showed how to translate from Greek to the Egyptian language, and it enabled the hieroglyphs to be decoded. This was a pivotal moment in the history of the work to understand ancient Egyptian civilization. It represented the bubbling up of ancient knowledge from under the surface into our world. Hello, Pluto, Lord of the Underworld. So all of this tells us that whenever we see big activations of 0 degrees Aries, we see important events taking place in Egypt. Why would that be? I'm not quite sure. Perhaps there's something special about this location and line of longitude that might have been why the pyramids were built there in the first place. And the Saturn-Neptune conjunction is another big activation of that 1st degree of the zodiac. It'll be in effect this year, and it'll go exact on February the 20th, 2026. So what might the events that accompany it be? There are always many levels to the manifestation of any kind of planetary event, and it will tend to express itself in different ways in different places. The Saturn-Neptune conjunction will have very mundane manifestations. One of them has been the Trump tariffs, for example. Neptune signifies oceanic things, things that flow like water, which include currency and goods that we trade. Saturn signifies limits and restrictions. Tariffs are placing limits on global trade. Simple. It'll also likely have to do with the end of the war in Ukraine and the fixing of Russia's nebulous border with Europe. And it could signify events relating to the political and geopolitical situation of Egypt, maybe even involving the Muslim Brotherhood, which came up at the conjunctions of Jupiter and Uranus at 0 Aries. One possibility I could see is a blockage of the Suez Canal. Blocking is something that Saturn, the planet of limits, tends to do. That's something that would bring the world's eyes on Egypt and potentially create a lot of chaos there. But this is also a conjunction with spiritual implications. The planet Saturn has to do with the material structure of reality, with what is concrete and manifest in the world. Neptune is a planet we associate directly with spiritual experience, with contact with the numinous, archetypal, and ideal. When these planets come together, we see a melding of these meanings in terms of the events in the world. We see attempts to give order and manifestation and structure to our experience of the spiritual. One of the ways this tends to manifest is in manifestations of spirit and of the uncanny. This is something I discussed in this video. A good example is the miracle of Fatima, which culminated with the miracle of the sun in 1917, when a huge crowd of people witnessed the sun appearing to dance in the sky. Many prominent UFO researchers, including Jacques Vallée, have connected this with the UFO phenomenon. UFOs tend to rise in prominence at these conjunctions, such as in 1952, which saw a massive UFO flap, including the famous sighting of quote-unquote saucers over Washington, or 1989, which saw the big wave of UFO sightings in Belgium, and the emergence of Bob Lazar, who claimed he'd been employed to reverse engineer UFOs at the infamous Area 51. Something else I've noticed, which I discussed in this long-form live stream available at worldastrologyreport.com, is that we see the theme of fallen angels emerging in public consciousness at these conjunctions. We saw this at the conjunction of 1783, when the Book of Enoch was discovered. The most famous painting of a fallen angel, The Fallen Angel by Alexander Cabanel, was finished in 1847 at one of these conjunctions. And in 1917, Rudolf Steiner gave his famous lectures on the fall of the spirits of darkness at yet another of these conjunctions. Is there any connection between the idea of fallen angels and Atlantis? Well, yes, there is. Many esotericists believe that the reference in the Bible to fallen angels is really talking about the fall of Atlantis. And the Atlanteans were said to have incredible flying machines, which are described in the Vedic texts as the Vimanas of the gods. All these subjects, fallen angels, UFOs, the pyramids and Atlantis, may in fact be connected. Saturn-Neptune conjunctions also frequently see the codifying of new religions. These are attempts to provide structure, Saturn, for interfacing with the spiritual realms, Neptune. For example, in 1525, at a conjunction of Saturn and Neptune, during the Protestant Reformation in Europe, the Anabaptist movement was emerging in Zurich, Switzerland. This was a Protestant movement that insisted that Christians needed to be baptized as adults when they could meaningfully commit to the faith rather than as babies. In 1738, at another of these conjunctions, another Christian religion emerged, Methodism, and most recently in 1954, at the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, at least 3 new religions emerged: Scientology, the Unification Church, and Wicca. On the other hand, something else that Saturn and Neptune conjunctions seem to signify are deceptions and the poisoning of the public mind. Richard Tarnas, the founder of the Archetypal Astrology School and a brilliant astrological historian, writes this of Saturn-Neptune. Not only deception, but also self-deception is a characteristic expression of this complex when negatively constellated. A state of delusion about one's actual condition in the world is carefully maintained by filtering out and denying all information that might cast question on the validity of one's rigidly protected belief system, thereby creating a closed feedback loop. Could it be that all this talk of Atlantis and vast structures on the pyramid is just some kind of delusion or big manipulation, a great lie designed to take people's minds off real problems and direct them towards the fantastical? Well, I guess that's not impossible, but Tarnas also writes, yet the same archetypal complex also tends to constellate a strong impulse to unmask deception, to reveal the illusion, to cut through the denial, to confront the dark reality behind the surface image. How can we know whether we're going to see great deceptions in the coming years or the revealing of them? Well, I suspect it's going to be a bit of both, but I think that this Saturn-Neptune conjunction, more so than usual, has the character of revelation to it. And the reason for that is that it's part of a remarkable configuration of outer planets called a minor grand trine. The conjunction will take place at the midpoint of Pluto and Uranus, and both of these planets have something to do with revelation. Uranus, the sky god, reveals from above. It's the planet of sudden enlightenment, of realizations that hit us like lightning bolts. Pluto, the lord of the underworld, reveals from below. It's the planet of secrets that emerge from the netherworld. So this Saturn-Neptune conjunction will probably have a far more revelatory character than these conjunctions usually do. Those revelations could come from below the ground, or from the sky, or most likely both. UFOs, ancient civilizations, advanced technology, they're all connected, and we're going to be grappling with all these themes in the coming years. Some of the revelations that are coming might hit certain people hard, particularly those of religious faith, because they may well contradict their most cherished beliefs. Disillusionment is natural when a system fails, but there will also be new possibilities rising up as the old crumbles away. So take courage. If you're watching this, you're ahead of the curve in embracing the changes to come. I think you'll be just fine. Some more normie friends who will need to look out for and help to shepherd into the new paradigm. When exactly are we going to see these events? Well, the Saturn-Neptune conjunction is active between now and the end of 2027. From now until then, we're in the hot zone. Now, in the members-only bonus section of this video, we're going to look at some more astrology that tells us why all this is happening now. Because even bigger cycles than the Saturn-Neptune cycle are also speaking to these changes. And we're going to consider the possibility that what we're seeing in the world may be a replay of something that Edgar Cayce said happened in Atlantis, a battle between two factions, the spiritually advanced Emilius group and the power-hungry sons of Belial. Cayce said this battle caused the destruction of Atlantis and that the souls who took part in it would be reincarnating to fight that battle again right about now. Oh, and we'll also explore what Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell have to do with all this, because they too, for better or worse, are players in this story. That's it for this video. Thanks, and see you again very soon.